a time when I don't really think I wanted to be part of our country anymore. In fact, I went to Canada to work for 2 years.
Hello, my name is Fatima, and I'm here with our team, with Selena and
Joaquin.
And Zoya.
Today we're going to be talking about the Vietnam War. We're going to be interviewing a veteran who fought through the battle, who carried the memories of it through his whole life. And we're going to be talking about not only how the Vietnam War has helped shape the development of American culture, but shape the development of American identity. Let's get right into it.
The person that we're interviewing is Mr. Ron Kester, who is 79 years old. He grew up in California but now lives in Kansas with his wife of 52 years. He discussed his experience in the Vietnam War. He was a soldier who fought on the ground besides his other friends. And he just discusses his experience and how it sort of impacted his life as a whole, leading to other traumatic experiences, especially how he discusses his dissociation from everybody he knows when he returned from the war.
so, especially with Ron Chester, I feel like his life was a prologue leading up to the Vietnam War because he lives it again, once in his childhood and once when he grows up. This feeling of having to adapt or fight overseas because he was told to tolerate many things.
Well, I grew up in a family that was very patriotic, and we'd had somebody fighting every war for America, and so I joined and became a Marine and went over there to fight for 2 years.
Okay, did you always know that you would grow up and do something like this? Was it expected of you?
Yes.
So he grew up this whole time during his childhood carrying this burden that he had to go to war. He had to go serve and leave his family, leave his country behind. And I just want to have a conversation about how Ron's past shaped his experiences during the war, because, you know, as you and him were talking about, Ron grew up in a pretty progressive area. His hometown had 87 different dialects that were spoken, and he was generally taught, to be open, have an open mind by his parents and things like that.
I was a Marine, and we
Okay.
fought over there on the ground. It was a very difficult war because you couldn't tell who the enemy were because the North Vietnamese and the South Vietnamese looked alike. And so it was easy for the North Vietnamese guerrillas, the Viet Cong, to blend in with the South Vietnamese, so you didn't know really who was good and who was bad. You had to watch your back all the time.
So he explains how it was often difficult during the fighting to tell who was on what side. And in the book I read by Tim O'Brien, he explains how Vietnam had an intense psychological effect on the soldiers, how there seemed to be an absence of morality, there seemed to be the breaking down of human society and laws in this place.
Yeah, I want to add, so in 1998, actually, there was a speech given by John McCain, and he emphasized how the Vietnam War transformed the negative memory that the Vietnam War had on Americans into a memory of pride. People started wanting to actually take participation in foreign affairs, and it shaped memorial practices in the way that it was actually one of the wars that brought about people putting down flowers. And when memorials are built near, they actually insert a space there for those flowers there.
Something that I felt was very interesting was how for many veterans who went through this, the war never really seemed to end for them, and they still carried the trauma throughout their whole lives. And he still, can tell stories about the war. He can still remember everything like it was fresh in his mind, even though it happened so many years ago in his life.
I had several friends that were killed over there. One was a man named Ron Powers. We grew up in high school together, and he went over to Vietnam in 1968, and he was killed. I had a good friend. His name was Hernandez. His last name was Hernandez. We called him Paco. He was actually killed right next to me during one of the battles that we fought in.
And that's really what war brings out in people, is the things like post-traumatic stress disorder and the pain of grieving your friends and the pain of being unsure in a place that you don't know, where somebody's trying to kill you.
Sometime between 1965 and 1967, that's when the hippie movement and the drug culture and other things got involved, and then a lot of the people who came back from Vietnam were angry, and so they were protesting against the government. And it was a very time of a lot of turmoil in our country. The drug culture was really starting to take hold of a lot of people, and it was a time when I don't really think I wanted to be part of our country anymore. In fact, I went to Canada to work for 2 years, and they helped with them refitting airplanes from America for the Canadians to use in their military service. Eventually, I came back to the United States because I didn't want to lose my citizenship. I was starting to get feeling better about what was going on, and so I came back and stayed.
So I think Vietnam really brought about a mental war inside the minds of soldiers, just like in The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, where Tim O'Brien writes about, the war never really ended for people, and they felt like they were in a place where they never belonged in the first place, where nothing makes sense, where everything was chaotic and irrational.
And then adding on to that, another thing that we wanted to focus on was the moral and psychological costs that weighed heavy on American soldiers and the Vietnamese civilians.
The Veterans Administration at that time wasn't very good. They didn't recognize PTSD and other forms of problems that the soldiers from Vietnam were experiencing. And the government was busy trying to reduce the turmoil that was happening in the country. We had a president who had to resign from office because of some things that he did, and we had a lot of turmoil in different places. When I went back to college, it was a little hard because everybody there was anti-war, and it was hard for the veterans to get along in that time frame. The Students for a Democratic Society were getting people to trying to influence people against our government, and it created a lot of problems. Also, there were some groups of people who became angry with the life in the United States, and they banded together and did a lot of damage to our culture.
So it just speaks to his experience that even as a very devoted U.S. citizen, he did not want to continue being in the country at that time, as he did not resonate with the ideologies that were present.
And fundamentally, this impacts us today, and it's not our choice to dismiss this, but we have to take it up.
It's our duty as Americans to remember our past, and there is no history without suffering. There is no history without the telling of stories being warped by the attitudes of what was going on at the time. And as we are educated in a society, we can only hope that we can tell these stories with accuracy. There's a sense of being patriotic in remembering our past, the good and the bad.
All right. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next one. That's a wrap.